Hi, everybody. I'm spiritual medium, psychotherapist, and author Kellee White.
And I am Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri, and welcome to Psychology in the Soul.
So glad you guys are here with us
Yeah.
tonight. My goodness. And Shirley, we have a big topic tonight. We're going to be
We
talking about
sure.
grief.
Yep. Grief, loss, and meaning making. Yeah.
Right. Which is so important.
Absolutely.
We both deal with grief
Oh, yeah. Grief
with our clients and
hits you
patients.
a ton of bricks, and it doesn't just mean, it means the ending of something. So it doesn't just mean death.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, grief is one of the most universal of human experiences. And I would say that it's probably one of the most misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because we live in a culture that wants to resolve grief quickly. Like, okay, it happened and keep going. Or just get over it. And I really believe it's because it makes some people uncomfortable, with the subject. And they don't know what to say or they don't know what to do. And they expect when there's a grief, you will become inspirational or you will somehow make sense of something. But grief doesn't necessarily work in any of that way. It doesn't move on a schedule.
Absolutely not, because grief isn't a pathology. It's not weakness, and it's not something to fix. And we'll get into a little bit later, some of the dumbest things someone can say to someone who's lost, a loved one. Really, all you need to do is just sit with them.
Just be.
Hold the space for them. And, when you're not sure what to do, saying a platitude doesn't help. What really helps, and we forget to do this. And one time I remember a very good friend of mine asked me this when I was having a really hard time. And I remember he said, "What can I do to help?" And it's a simple question, but it really, really helps the person, even if they say nothing.
Just sit with me.
Exactly.
Don't say a word.
But it's better than they lived a long life. We'll get into all those, all those things that we say out of wanting to comfort the person. So it's not out of malice. But, grief is a natural psychological response to loss.
Yeah, it is. And spiritually, grief is something that we do not bypass. You can't will yourself through it, really, because it's something that I want to say all of us are going to experience. And we're not even actually tonight, we're not going to talk about, anticipated grief. But I have a dog that's got cancer, and, there is an anticipation here of something that will happen. So it's interesting with grief because it's a universal experience. So when we sign up to Earth, when we say, oh, guess what? I'm going to Earth school. Oh, you've been accepted? Yes, I am. Okay. Well, part of the curriculum, if you will, is grief. And we are all going to experience it. And you have to honor yourself as you go through grief. You have to honor yourself. So this episode tonight, we're going to be talking about and understanding grief. So psychologically and spiritually, without rushing into it, because we can't rush into the meaning before it's ready.
Yeah. Well, that is almost, we can look at that like a psychological bypass when we want to rush to the meaning before we actually just sit and feel it.
Right. Exactly.
Different than a spiritual bypass. It's kind of a psychological bypass.
Right. It's so true.
Yeah. Because as I said, grief is an emotional response to loss. It's very healthy to feel it, even though it is so hard to sit with it. And that's why, sitting with it with someone that can just hold the space, that doesn't get kind of nervous with you just crying or just feeling your feelings, is a wonderful thing to do. And of course, on your own as well too. But it's the loss is broader than just death. As I said a moment ago, we grieve, of course, the death of loved ones, but also divorce. There's grief in divorce. There's grief in a lost future. You thought you were going to do something and you have to shift, in identity.
Well, let me address that for a second with identity, because that's really true. In my case, I had a traumatic brain injury, and that was a complete loss of sense of self, actually. And so I grieved my old life for quite some time, actually, because of who I was. And I had no idea who I was going to become. So the other thing with not just the death of loved ones, but animals. too. It's very important to remember that.
Absolutely. But I'm glad that you said that about identity. Yeah, you had to grieve who you knew yourself, to.
The loss, it's called loss of sense of self. I wrote my thesis on it because it's
Yeah,
so important.
yeah,
It was,
yeah,
so there's all kinds of grief. This one, I didn't even know existed. Oh, and it exists.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of going through it now, grieving who you were. I just turned 60. Ooh.
Mhm.
And okay, it's another
That's
kind
right.
of
No, you're right.
decade.
You're right. It's
So
another
you're
decade
grieving
you're looking at.
who I
Yeah.
knew myself to be to start to, and we can't, there's no room, or there isn't a lot of room to in acceptance when we don't grieve the old, when we just kind of want to bypass that,
Yeah.
because it does require grief. And I went to Cabo to celebrate with my daughter and my sister, and at dinner, my daughter asked me the most interesting question that I'm still thinking about it. She
Oh,
said,
those daughters, they do bring
I
stuff up for us.
I know. But it was so lovely. So the next day I thought about it. Of course, me, my left brain. When she first asked me, I was like, I don't know, and I didn't know. But then I thought about it. And so I answered it the next night at dinner. She said, what did you learn in each decade?
Oh, great question.
And that can help with the grief. And then so what it prompted me also is, what do I want this decade to look like?
Right. And then
You know?
spiritually, we come here
Mhm.
to learn and to grow. So
Mhm.
you'll learn
Mhm.
something 0 to 10. You'll learn something 10 to,
Yeah.
20. I mean,
Yeah.
you learn something. I
Yeah.
love that you could look back and say, what did I learn at this period?
Mhm.
And what am I
Mhm.
looking forward to learning?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So we also grieve health changes. I mean, I know I went through a lot
Mhm.
of that in the last year and a half.
You really got walloped.
I sure
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you tell me this year is the end of my walloping year, and I'm about to enter
Yeah.
less
Out of that
wallop.
Saturn return, 58, 59, 60, 10 people tend to get walloped.
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
my God, did I ever? Career transitions. We grieve career
Yeah.
transitions. And
We're
even,
seeing a lot of that now, Shirley. A lot of people are changing careers now, or their careers have ended, and
yeah,
we're going to see a lot of that. Does that play out in your practice? Do you see that?
it does. It does. And it's not about, we don't grieve because what's coming isn't exciting. What's coming can be very exciting,
Right.
but we're grieving the shift. We're grieving the change,
Right.
right?
Another one that's
Mm.
really large now, probably because there were so many people born in the baby boomers, but looking at Social Security and how does that work?
Yeah.
Like grieving, like all of a sudden there's a whole new world we have to figure out,
Hmm.
and then the
Hmm.
whole technology piece. So there could be grief along,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
miss the 70s, we were talking about
Oh,
yacht rock today.
I went to a yacht rock concert on Friday night. It was
And,
so fun. I knew every song. But yeah, I'll never forget how I felt the first time I received my AARP membership
right,
mail. I
right.
was like,
It
oh,
was a shocker.
it was a total shocker. And I just had to kind of sit with it for a little bit,
Right.
The first time I had to use the Sensodyne sensitive toothpaste, like
It's my favorite.
my mother use. I thought, oh my God, I've become my mother. So, estranged relationships, we grieve
So
those.
that would be relationships that are no longer working, and you've been broken up or
Yeah,
whatever, and yeah, there can be a lot of grief
a
around that
lot of
one.
grief. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. The childhood we didn't have, we
Right.
grieve.
That's a big one.
What I do in my work a lot is the parents we never had, and we're never going to have. Grieving that idea of a parent that I needed, but I never had. Doesn't mean you can't love your parent, and doesn't mean you have to be angry at your parent, but you're also grieving what you didn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so grief is the nervous system adjusting to the absence of.
Mhm.
Everything that we just talked about is there's an absence there. And so it's the nervous system adjusting to that.
Isn't that an interesting way to view this? So
Yeah.
it's physical as well. It's emotional, it's physical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone today in a session that said the pain in their heart, they're grieving a relationship, the pain in their heart was so big. So it was so somatic. It was so, they could feel the pain in their heart,
Yeah.
and I just sat with them while I invited them to just feel it
Hmm.
and put their hands on it and imagine that they were holding their heart, and having a conversation between mind and body, mind telling the heart, I'm going to protect you now.
Wow.
You're safe, you know? So those are all important things to do while we're grieving, whatever the grief may be, to notice how it feels in your body,
Right.
you know? And then of course we're familiar, most of us are, with the well-known 5 stages of grief, the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and they were never meant. Sometimes we think that if we go through one, then we go to the next one and we don't go back. They're never meant to be linear. They're emotional states, not steps.
Right. I remember when my mom died, I went straight to anger.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for at least 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the damnedest thing. Again, I was even surprised.
Right. And anger is a very common one. And people then throw in guilt. They feel guilty because they're angry that someone passed away. And it's just such a natural. You're angry that they're no longer there in physical form. You're angry that, it's okay. Let's not add another emotion like guilt to the whole thing, right? Grief doesn't progress naturally or neatly. It comes at the most inopportune times.
Well, it comes naturally, not in a special order. It comes at any time, at any order.
Absolutely. And anything can remind you. A smell. You walk by a bakery and it reminds you of your mom, as an example. A color. Your childhood house was yellow and you see the color yellow and you get a little bit of a feeling. Music, of course.
Oh, yeah. Oh, music for sure. Shirley, there's another grief, and somebody wrote me this question and they wanted me to discuss this, and how your relationships change after a death of a child.
Oh, gosh.
So you have a child, the child passes, but you've had, the friends and the this, and how do the relationships that you have that have changed. I have chills when I even think about that.
Yeah.
But people that you thought were friends maybe might fade away. They might not be able to, handle the grief, or they might not be able to handle any of it. Mm-hmm. But this gal wrote to me and she said, thankfully, new people have come into her life that have stood behind her or beside her and helped her move with her grief. And in a case like this, I mean, if you are in this situation, have the parent, if you can, who's lost the child, tell their stories, share stories of that, because that's one thing that is a wonderful thing to do. They love to talk about their child and in the most wonderful ways to say it. So those secondary losses that were completely unexpected can be wildly sad and real grief.
Right. I love that you're saying that, because it is so important to let somebody talk. We have a fear that, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to remind them. They're already feeling the grief. And actually being able to talk about it and feeling safe with someone that they know can handle them talking about it, especially the death of a child. I mean, my goodness, Kelly, I'm so glad that on the other side, I wasn't, optimistic enough to think that I could handle that in this lifetime.
Yeah.
It's something that
it's getting your PhD on Earth.
Yeah.
It is the biggest type of loss. That can happen here.
At any age, really.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. There are days when grief is going to feel manageable, and then there are going to be days that I swear to you, it will feel as raw as the very beginning of it, and that fluctuation is completely normal. My own experience is this, and I tell a lot of people, as I work, as a medium and a therapist, I work so much with loss. And my experience has always been that the first year for me of a big loss is a blur. There's just like a blur that happens for me. And the second year almost is more challenging and harder than the first year, because the awareness is palpable. I have such an awareness of this,
Yeah. Sometimes when, and the first of anything is also so hard. The first holiday, the first birthday, the first Mother's Day, if it's that, just know that the first of everything is going to be so, so difficult. Yeah. Neurologically, grief activates many of the same brain centers as physical pain. So you actually feel it. It feels painful. And as I said before, the hurt of the heart can be the most difficult part, because you're feeling it. It's not just in your mind.
It's a real broken heart.
It really is. Yeah. Loss is also experienced as a threat to the attachment connection. All of a sudden you feel that attachment connection, like parents, you feel whether you get along with them or you they're not your favorite people at times, there's a tethering. There's a sense of
Oh,
tethering
for
there.
sure.
And
sure.
so when they pass, that tethering is kind of gone. So that can be part of the grieving too, that you've lost that tethering, that attachment.
And have you heard this one when this happens? So mother, father died, both die. Oh, now you're an orphan.
You know what? I heard that from
that.
somebody. I almost slapped the shit out of them.
Me too.
That is so stupid. No, you're not.
Right.
You're just a person whose parents have passed on.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's that untethering. But when I hear that, it's just,
I just don't like it. I don't like the
labeling of something like that, or what it means.
Not so much the labeling, but the idea. I mean, to me, an orphan is a little kid that grew up without parents, but they're still a little kid, so there's empathy.
Yeah, of course.
There. I don't view it as like a. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of pisses me off. That's
me too.
My left brain getting pissed. But when we lose someone significant, the brain continues to search for them.
Oh, yes.
Why some people, and this is your territory as far as spirituality, but that's why some people can hear their voice, expect them to walk through the door. They dream vividly about them. I do believe also from a spiritual standpoint, those are messages. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, and the other one that was big for me is going to the phone to call them. And my mother will have been gone. Shirley, it's hard to imagine, but it's been 7 years. In April, it'll be 7 years.
I know. I have it in my calendar. Oof.
Right? I mean, it's just hard to fathom. And so I literally, the other day, there was something that happened. Like, I got a call. It caught me off guard.
Yeah.
It just catches you off guard. But actually, you might hear their voice because that they may be standing right next to you, saying their name right there. And the dreams about them, of course, are visits. Those are real visits. I remember when my dad passed away, my stepmom Judy had this wild dream. She had a dream that my dad was a trumpet player, and so she had a dream that he walked through the house after he had passed. She knew he was passed, and she said, "Lee, there you are." And he looked at her and he big smile, and he picked up his trumpet case, as totally my dad would, and walked out the front door.
Oh my God.
I'm like, yep, that sounds right. That tracks.
That is so funny. Well, remember your sister. Your sister saw her dog at the foot of her bed. She had this dog that she just loved.
She loved Henry. Yeah.
And after he passed, she saw him at the foot of her bed.
And I'll tell you another thing. She called me over the weekend. She had a dream with my grandmother, and my grandmother passed away in 1977. So you can imagine how shocking that was. And my grandmother was staring at her and watching her cook. Well, Carol just started cooking. So I'm sure my Jewish grandmother was like, "No, we don't do it that way. We're going to do this instead."
Right.
But keeping an eye on her, I thought that was really sweet and wonderful.
That's so funny. It's funny because I, of course, believe in all of this and embrace it. But remember when we started working at the office and you would say, "Hey, did your patient just this and this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how do you know?" And, "Oh, I saw them." And okay, Kel, I don't want to see them. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them. I know they're around, but I do not want to see them. I'm not sure how I would react. Myself.
Well, some people, you might have a heart attack because it can be quite alarming. But then the other way is sometimes it's so peaceful. You see them and you just, it's an extraordinary experience to have.
Because I remember the first time you shared that with me, I asked, "How do you see them?" And of course, I was going to Casper the Ghost. Do you see them?
Right. Sometimes, on occasion.
Really?
Not as often now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not very often. It's like Casper the Ghost, because I don't want to have a heart attack. I'm getting older too. And it's scary, all of a sudden, because it's like out of context. That did happen to me in 2020 when a dear friend passed away of COVID, and he showed up. I was stunned. It really could have caused me physical harm.
You said to me in the most matter-of-fact way, "No, I see him like I see you."
Yeah. Yes, that is true. But now it's really third eye. I get a strong sense and I see him that way.
Okay.
So it's just different. And the other thing is a different vibration now. Now it's all about, I'm really clairaudient, so I can hear a lot that goes on that they want to tell me. So everything has grown and transformed for me. As what happens in your medium, that's what happens. You grow into it, and the other things happen. So initially you might see something like that, but not too often.
Yeah. And things, I mean, things that become a habit from years and years, like you said, even to this day, you still thought, oh, I want to tell mom about this.
Yes.
It's such a habit. The nervous system doesn't immediately understand permanence, and
Oh, isn't that an interesting perspective?
yeah,
So the nervous system doesn't necessarily understand that it's permanent.
no.
Oh, that would be too overriding. It would override your system.
It would until then you being able to talk to her, like you just said, that habit of until the habit starts to weaken because you don't do it as often.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I talk to her in a different way.
Right. I'll never forget. I was talking to you on your way home from the office one time, and all of a sudden your dad's music started to blast in the radio.
That's true. I mean, again, we could do a whole show on messages. I mean, how we start to receive messages. And, there is no such thing as death. There's the loss of the physical part of it, but the soul goes on. I mean, it's psychology and the soul. Don't forget that piece. But this is where spirituality can actually help a lot with this. And it's not by denying the pain. When I see somebody that they come to see me, and for mediumship, I am literally holding their heart like this. When you're a medium, you are holding the heart as you described, because it's such great loss, and there needs to be such great caring for this. So it's more by allowing the continued connection in a new form. So they'll, it's called evidential mediumship, so I'll give them some evidence that it's there, or this or that, and give them a lot of information. And even then they might be stuck. They might be like stunned or shocked. And I remember when my mom died, Mavis, I was very fortunate that Mavis Patilla was one of my dearest friends and mentors. And she wanted to do a reading for me, and I was in no space to hear it. I was in so much pain. And James too. James, and I had the best in the world wanting to help me, but I had to shut down. It overrode my system.
Wow.
The grief overrode my system. I shut down. And I often will say to people, they'll say, is it time? Should I have a mediumship reading with you, like, a week after or 2 weeks after? And I'm like, oh my God, no, because let's give it a little time. It's not just for the other side, but it's frankly for you, because the grief in 1 week is different than the week in week 2, which is different in week 3, which is, and so sometimes people will sit with me and it's too soon. And I had worked with a woman once who was really pissed off. I said, when did your mother die? She said, 2 days ago. And I stopped her and I gave her money back. And I said, I know the anger that comes with this. I get it. I don't know who talked you into doing this, but here's your money back. You can see me in a few months when you get worked through some of the anger here.
Now, I wonder, though, because I've always thought about that. Isn't it nice to, right after it happens, when you're so in shock and in disbelief, isn't it nice to get a message with them saying,
it depends on what
I'm
stage
good,
of grief
I'm
you're in,
safe.
Cheryl. It depends on what stage you're in. So I saw her immediately. Have you ever seen somebody where that they're just pissed off? Like so pissed. I was like, this is not going to work. Spirit's not, it's not that the mom wouldn't be there. It has nothing to do with that. It was her mom had died, and she was just, so it's depending on what the state is. And the other thing is depending on, like where they are with everything. Sometimes just a good, grief session with me would be better. And then of course that would kind of hold the heart enough for them to be able to receive messages, to hear them. And then the other thing is, people will, in this case, I record it. They have no idea what I have said, because they're in psychological shock, actually.
That's shock,
and psychic shock. I'll say, John, I don't know a John. John was their father. That happened to me once when I was, had a reading too soon. I didn't have a clue.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're so in shock you can't hear it.
You just cannot. You cannot.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's where spirituality can help, is not by denying any of the pain, but allowing people, or allowing them to understand that there's a connection in a new form. But again, Cheryl, timing is everything. So premature spiritual explanations can totally invalidate psychological processing. Totally.
Wow. Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So, most grief gradually integrates over time. And the integration doesn't mean you never feel it. One of my patients said something, she was grieving her mother, and she said something so insightful. She said, you never stop grieving. You just feel it less often as time goes by. And
so
she
true.
was so right on. And when you feel it, sometimes it could be just as intense as when it first happened. So
true. And Cheryl, I have to tell you, I had two in 2 years. I lost two widows. I say that because I had two clients that I just loved them both so much. They had lost their spouses. And on many occasions when I work with widows, which I do often, they are not in this place. This place was very different. Both, I had two at the same time. Can you imagine this? And they both said, like, they just wanted to die, and that was it. There was, they wanted to be with their spouses, no matter what. Cheryl, there was nothing. Didn't matter what I would have done or said. And so, as a therapist and a medium working with them, you have to honor where they are.
yeah.
I had to honor
Absolutely.
that. And both of them, I went through literally the entire time till one died, one spouse, one client died. And then my other, who I became dear friends with, her name was Vicky. And I just adored her, loved her. You would love her, Shirley. She was so great. She was a huge fan of yours. But I knew she had to go. I knew it. There was not a damn thing I could say or do or period. So I learned. That was a big learning curve for me. I learned so many things about that relationship that I had with her and her relationship with her husband. It was really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think what you're saying is to respect the person's process and respect how they feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again,
even
sometimes,
if it's difficult.
Even if it's difficult. Oh, and trust me, it was difficult for me. Poor Dawn. Yeah. It was really difficult for me because I cared so much about her. She was young. She was younger than me. I was like, whoa. But I learned a lot from that experience. And again, it's really meeting somebody where they are. And it was okay. It all worked out.
Yeah. And so the question, I think, is, again, as I always say that I learned from Peter Levine, being curious. Why am I having such a hard time with this? To be curious about what's going on with you that you cannot, or having a difficult time accepting someone for where they're at.
And it's, for me, during that experience, I am such a saver. I thought I could save her, and she did not want to be saved.
She didn't want to be saved.
No, and she was very clear. Wow. And the other gal too, but she just did not want to be saved. And she said, Kellee, you can't save me. I don't want to be saved. And I said, I understand. And that's what, for me, that was a big one. Yeah. I had to step back and go, I understand.
I have to. I mean, I have to validate you, hearing them.
Thank you.
Putting your stuff out of the way and really hearing where they were and what they needed from you. That's not always an easy thing.
Oh, Lord. That was a hard year. Wow. And in fact, it'll be 1 year. She died on Mother's Day of last year. Yeah. And I was with my daughter when I got the call from her sister to tell me she had passed. And it was, it was a hard one. Yeah. That was a big one. But I learned so much. Yeah. As we do about all kinds of grief.
Well, as you say, everybody's a teacher.
Everybody's a teacher. Oh my God.
Yeah. So sometimes grief can be complicated or prolonged.
Well, let's talk about complicated grief.
Yeah. So sometimes when grief becomes complicated, it could be because of sudden death.
Sudden death's a big one. If you get that, that's a big one, sudden death.
Traumatic loss, how the person passed on. Unresolved relational conflict, when you don't feel like you finished saying what you needed to say.
Okay, so let's talk about that. That could be, you have an abusive mother, you have an abusive father, you have a crazy ass sister. Oh, I'm just saying. Or you have any of the above, and you're, in a fight with them, and then they suddenly die. I have worked with that many times. People will come to me and they have shame over it, or they have, blame or guilt, or so then we have to process all of that, that unresolved. And this is Earth. We're gonna have, when we go, I promise, we're all gonna have unresolved something or other, because this is just a state Earth is a school of
Well,
chaos.
exactly. Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
You're
Especially,
welcome.
yeah. Well, and so what I tell people sometimes when they have, let's say, a lot of times this has happened with a mother, it's an adult daughter or son that I'm seeing, and mother's about to pass, and there's still a lot of anger, but they can't work through it with the parents. So I tell them, do what will help you feel less guilty when they pass. So if what would help you feel less guilty is to go visit them, even though it's difficult for you and you're still
Yeah.
noticing anger,
That's
go
actually
work with
great
the anger
advice.
in
Yeah.
here.
Do
But
what would
don't
make you feel less guilty.
exactly. Don't do something that's going to make you feel, going to add guilt. Well, I should have visited her more and I didn't. Yeah, yeah.
Right,
So
right.
just
I
kind of
actually
an
had
aside.
somebody whose mother was borderline, Cheryl, and
Yeah,
I said the same thing that you just said. I said, well, look, see how you feel. If you don't go, are you going to feel worse? If you go, are you going to feel worse? She said, I'm going to feel worse both ways.
yeah.
And then I
Well,
said, all right, so what did you decide to do? She said, I decided to go. And then you know what the mother said to her when she got there?
oh my
She
God,
said,
what?
get the F out of here. I don't want to see you.
Oh God.
So let me tell you the sessions we had after that.
Oh, I bet. But to be honest, it was probably relieving to her because now she didn't have to feel
Totally.
guilty about not going because
That's
the
it.
mother kicked her out. Yeah.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
is
Well, thank
exactly
you,
what
Mom,
happened. Yeah.
for being a dick until
Thank
the end.
you. You're right.
Sorry.
Whoa. Can you imagine that on
Lord.
the other side when you all get together as a cell group? You know what you said to me?
Oh my God. I know. I know. It's yeah.
Oh,
So when you have a lack of support and people
no.
who, that can complicate grief. And so it's so important to ask for what you need. People on the avoidant attachment side, like myself, have a hard time asking for help. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to ask for what you need, ask for support, even just say, I was feeling, I was grieving and I just needed to reach out and talk to somebody. So even if it's making a phone call, to not
Right.
feel alone during, because that can complicate, or
Right.
prolong your grief
Right.
when there's multiple losses.
Well, Shirley, you and I have worked several times with that multiple losses one, airplane accidents.
Yeah.
We've worked with patients for you and clients for me that have had lots of loss. I mean, talk about trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. That's really complicated.
Absolutely. I had my lovely gardener. He lost his mother first during COVID, 6 months later, his father, and 6 months after that, his brother.
Oh
And
no.
so that's multiple
Oh,
loss,
that's too
so
much
much loss.
loss.
Yeah.
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 And sometimes I'll say that to somebody when that happens. I'll say that's too much loss. I mean, it just
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well, we have a
It
very
would
good friend.
override your system.
Yeah. You and I both have a very good friend who had many losses within a 2-3 year period of time. Yeah. Complicated grief may involve a persistent yearning,
Yeah,
for that
for
person,
sure.
inability to accept the loss.
Oh, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, any avoidance of reminders. I don't want to be reminded.
I
So
heard somebody say that to me the other day. They said,
yeah.
it's going to be my mother's birthday, but I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. People who sometimes put everything away too quick because they don't want to be reminded. There's also the other side where people have a hard time, even years
Oh,
after,
shrines forever for,
shrines forever or
Yeah.
cleaning up the closet,
Yeah.
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 What can complicate grief too is what we just talked about, intense guilt. I should have
Yeah.
done this, or I could have done that, or,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can feel like an identity collapse, just like you were
Well,
talking about with the
and
wives.
let's say you were married for 50
Yeah,
years
yeah,
and your spouse passes. Who
yeah,
am I now?
right.
It's so interesting. I saw this woman on a TikTok, and she's in her 80s and her husband just died. And she said she was looking at grocery carts. Like she would go into like Trader Joe's and look at grocery carts, and
Mm.
she would always figure out, oh, that person has, a family of 3, or that person is this. And she said, I bet you people are looking at me because now I'm only shopping for one, and they see
Oh,
a wedding ring on and they think, oh, they feel sorry for me. So I'm watching this going, if I saw that, I don't know if I would think that at all. First of all, I never pay attention to any of that kind of stuff, but I think I would be thinking, what are you cooking tonight? Knowing the way I think,
yeah.
oh, that looks interesting. I don't think I would ever think that, but
I
she
don't
made a
even
point
think
of
I
it.
would
Is that
notice
something
it.
that you would notice?
No, not at all. I wouldn't even notice it.
Okay.
I'd probably say, see, she's not overbuying. I should know
Yeah.
the body. You know?
And I would say, chicken breast. What are you going to do with that?
Right. Exactly. Even being the chef. So it has everything to do, what we project onto others, really gives us a window into what we're thinking about ourselves. Because even if somebody was thinking that, if that's what we believe someone's thinking without verifying it, right? Then just know, be curious about that, and just know that that's how you're feeling. That's what you're thinking. And so that may be something to then take into therapy or a grief, support group.
Well, absolutely. And Shirley, talk about grief overlapping with trauma.
Well, it can overlap with trauma, especially if the death was traumatic. If it was a car accident, if it was a murder. And so now you have both that you're working with, and so it really complicates things. And so you just take it, you peel it like a proverbial onion. You just peel it and you work little by little.
Yeah. If you're able to.
Right? If you're able to, too. I mean, the one of the really difficult ones is a car accident where someone passed away, but I stayed alive.
Oh,
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. Yeah, that's it. And when loss is sudden, or if it's violent, like you just said, the nervous system will hold the shock in addition to the sadness. Can you talk about that a little bit, about the body processing both?
That's why it's so important to just notice the body. I had a session today. We weren't necessarily talking about grief, but we were just taking it to the body. The mind wants to go, well, maybe because of this and this and this, and go into intellectual, rationalizing.
Sure.
I say, let's put that to the side just for a moment, and let's just notice what you feel in the body. And you stay with it. You give it enough time and space, and that's how you can start to work with the shock that gets stuck in the nervous system as you're working with, the trauma and the loss and the grief.
Because the body's got to process both.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it gets stuck in the body. Words are just words. Words don't heal. They can help, but in and of themselves, they don't heal.
So there's grief therapy. There's trauma-informed therapy. There's somatic work that Dr. Shirley does. And if you do any of this, it doesn't mean a sign of weakness. They're just tools to help you integrate.
It's actually a sign of strength.
Yeah.
How many times have I heard in my practice, oh my God, therapy is not easy. And I'm like, no. I always validate the strength and the courage that it takes to sit in something that is so uncomfortable, and in this case, grief, so painful. It takes a lot of courage. It is certainly quite the opposite of weakness.
Oh my God, certainly. And grief often will bring existential questions, which are, my favorites when I get somebody that comes to me about this. And the question, could be, why did this happen? So we can go down an existential road with that. I can talk about it from a spiritual lens of why this happened. And then I'll get, what is the purpose of suffering? So I'll go into the, spiritual realm of that, of why we come to Earth. Not necessarily to suffer, but actually to release suffering. It's called detachment, and there's a whole thing behind that. So I can get really into that. The other question I often get is, where are they now? What are they doing now? And then who am I without them? Who am I without them? Because again, that loss of identity. And these are not intellectual questions. They're more like, identifying things. And so often this is why, or when a medium would be, somebody would seek out a medium. And I just want to say, if you're seeking out a medium, just be mindful of their background, just be mindful of it, because you might be in a vulnerable state. And so just be, mindful of that, of who they are, and maybe look at some of their work. Yeah. Yeah. What I love that you've always said, and I think James has always said it too, it's never about a negative message. Correct. Ever. It's a message that will help understand, that will help integrate, that will enhance. And holds your heart in this situation. But it's not about a negative message. So, and I can't even believe, but you've told me that you come across mediums who will give messages. I don't know if it's coming up in their own mind about something like mean. I've seen it. As they say, I've seen it. James and I were doing something once when we saw this. We couldn't believe it. So do you believe that
is actually coming from someone on the other side, or is it coming from
Not at
more the
all.
medium interpreting?
No, it's the medium and the
Okay, that's what I
projection
thought.
and
Yeah.
an untrained, non-ethical, non-empathic idiot.
Mhm.
Did I say enough?
You did. You
Did
did.
I get that? Did I make my point?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Meaning making is a psychological and I'd say spiritual process.
Totally, to make
You know,
meaning,
we
totally.
shouldn't impose it because we shouldn't try to do that when we're not ready. It just
Right.
emerges. It
Right.
truly just emerges. Research shows that people who eventually integrate loss often do so by reconstructing meaning, by
Yes. Yeah.
finding a meaning. But again,
Yeah.
that emerges. It's not about minimizing the pain. Absolutely not. That is part of the meaning,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And grief will take you on that journey. Sometimes for some people, Shirley, grief is a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, it
It
can be.
just is. It
Absolutely.
can be done, not all the time, but it can be. Because
Yeah.
then you start getting curious, as you would say. You get curious to
Right.
where'd they go, what they do, and then you want to start reading the books. And so that can be a full spiritual awakening. And then all of a sudden their loved one who's passed is their guide.
Yeah.
And throwing books at them and all kinds of things that happen. So it can be that kind of a journey as well.
Oh, I will never forget. That has happened to me so often so often. I mean, it feels often because it is so shattering,
Shattering, yeah.
where I'll just get the thought to
Mhm.
go somewhere. And then all of a sudden I go somewhere and I see this book that looks interesting. And that's actually how I got to, we talked about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who kind of was like the person that started to make meaning from death.
She
And
did. She did.
I just literally walked into a bookshelf and it was almost like I was being guided. And I saw this, it's a tiny little book
Yeah.
on
Death
life
and
after
Dying?
death. No,
Like-
it's called On Life After Death. I have it here.
Okay.
It's a very thin, it's such an easy read. And all of a sudden, it all made sense.
Who wrote that book?
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Oh, it is. That's her book. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
She wrote
Definitely.
an important one on death and dying, but on life after death,
Yeah, excellent book.
an
Excellent book.
incredible. And she's, so you sometimes, you're just guided. And it could be your
Absolutely.
spiritual
And I just
guide.
want to mention that she worked with David Kessler. David Kessler worked with her. She's long passed, but David Kessler wrote, I think, the 6 of the 5 ways of grief, the 6th one, and making meaning. But and we should put that up, Jared, if you could put grief.com, because we are going to talk about that. Grief.com is a wonderful place to go to get healing if you are in a space for that. Grief.com, David Kessler, he really knows his stuff here.
Yeah. Support groups can be really, really important because many times when we're going through something, especially grief, we tend to, without even realizing, to isolate. And there is something so comforting. And again, maybe not right at the beginning. You have to be curious about what, but something so comforting about other people having gone through a similar experience.
Right. Oh, I have many clients that have met future spouses actually in grief groups.
That's right. You were just telling me that.
Oh yeah, it's extraordinary. And when that happens, and I always, understand that the other side can bring this to happen too, help facilitate that. So, so spiritual integration can include one of the things that we can do is maybe a ritual, like when my mom passed, or any of my dogs that have passed, I have, their stuff up, I do. I have I made it like a little place for them, so like a certain ritual or a prayer that could help. That could be spiritual integration or meditation. Meditation is great to help with this because the bonds continue. It may look different physically. They're no longer physically there, but the bond is always there. The bond is always there for you. So it doesn't, and there's a symbolic connection too that can be made too, but it doesn't erase the human ache, which is really what we're talking about, because grief and meaning absolutely can coexist. You can have grief and you can have meaning too.
Yeah. That's an important distinction. Nothing that you do, even the things that we're suggesting, will take away the pain. So that's an important thing to know. It will just help you through it.
Mhm.
but it won't take it away. Sometimes we have this thought that, well, I still feel the same, or that didn't help. It's not
Right.
supposed to help you feel less pain. It's just supposed to help you while you're going through the pain, like a
Yeah.
ritual or prayer or meditation. So
Yeah.
that's an important distinction.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So things to avoid, which we alluded to a little bit at the beginning, which are my pet peeve,
Yeah.
is, first of all, rushing acceptance, doing the psychological bypass,
Yes.
comparing grief. Well, it's not as bad as my, friend who went through.
Oh gosh, that has
Right.
happened. I've heard that one many, many, many times.
Yeah, yeah. Minimizing loss, well, you weren't that close anyways, that kind
Well,
of thing.
how's this one, Shirley? You didn't like your mother anyway.
Right, exactly.
Oh my God, have
Yeah.
I heard that one so many
Yeah.
times?
Or using cliches, which is the one I can't stand.
Oh,
Well, they
please.
lived a long life.
Oh my God.
Can I fucking kick you now?
Yeah, seriously.
I mean,
Yeah.
who can, that is so
Oh
not, because
my God.
what it is, what you're saying to the person is, what's wrong with you that you're feeling so sad? Your
Yes.
mom was 95,
Mhm.
so you're adding to their grief.
Oh,
It
completely.
doesn't matter how
Right.
long a person lived, statements like they're in a better place. Okay, yeah, that may become later when the person is in the integration phase, when the person is making meaning out of it. Maybe that statement can be a nice reminder.
Right.
At least they lived a long life. That's the one that I was
God.
talking about, or everything happens for a reason.
Oh my God.
That again, spiritual
Please.
bypass. Yes, we all know that, and at some point
Yeah.
we'll get to that, but not when it first happens, and not when the person isn't ready, and it could take years.
Years. I mean, it totally invalidates your emotions.
Exactly. And it could be unintentionally, because of course the people want to be helpful. The best helpful thing that you can do is remember, less is more. I am so sorry.
Is there anything I can do for
Is
you?
there anything that I
Get
can
you a
do
cup
to
of
help?
coffee? Can you want to tell me a story about somebody?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember originally when my mom died, I couldn't talk to anybody. I just couldn't. I was not in a space to talk. I wasn't in a space to listen. I had my own, I mean, I never knew that I would have grief that way, like that, because you don't know until it happens. You don't know,
Right. Exactly.
and again, grief does not need to be explained away. You do not have, you do not have to explain your grief.
Right.
I mean, in fact, if anything, frankly, it needs to be witnessed.
Exactly. Exactly. It needs to be witnessed and not judged.
And not judged.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So some things, that are helpful. Some of the things that we've mentioned is, grief journaling is always writing things down. There's a big difference between keeping them all up here or putting them on paper, whether you're putting them on paper like this by typing or actually writing.
And let me say something about that, Shirley. If you're doing grief journaling or you're writing a letter to your whomever it is, your spouse or whoever it is, your child, they are reading the letter, because so many times I'll do a reading. This just happened last week. And I'll say, oh, they're telling me about like the apple tree and the da 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 da. And she said, oh my God, were you reading my journal? That's what I wrote to my daughter in my journal. I said, no, it wasn't me. She was reading your journal.
Wow.
So they read it. They read it.
Yeah. So that's a wonderful reminder. Memory integration, which is just about talking about it.
Yes.
Therapy can be really helpful like that. If you worry if you're going to burden somebody who also has experienced the loss of the same person, you might feel like you're burning them. So therapy is a wonderful place to go. And I've had people just tell me stories about the person that they've lost, and just share stories with me.
Yeah. It's really special when that happens.
Yeah. And I really, I don't take lightly their trust in sharing those things with me. Narrative reconstruction.
Narrative reconstruction. You bet.
Yeah. Again, as I always said, somatic grounding, really just grounding yourself somatically, because the pain can be so.
You get out of your body. You literally feel like you're out of your body.
Yeah. So what I have in my office, and we can put the, I think it's neuroeffectivetouch.com, but is pillows, those weighted blankets. And there's a wonderful therapist that has created these pillows, and they have flax seeds in them, and you can even heat them. So maybe when you're feeling your grief, you sit on the couch, you put something weighted around you.
And don't you have one, Cheryl, where you can put them in the microwave or something, and they
Yeah.
warm
These
up?
are the pillows. Yeah.
Oh, they're
So
really
I
comfortable.
think and we'll put it in, we'll put it somewhere where you guys can find it. I think it's neuroeffectivetouch.com, but we'll put it somewhere where you can buy these pillows. They're a beautiful red velvet, and you can wash them, and you can put them in the microwave. And so it feels like there's something, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And then you can sit in your grief, and it feels just a teeny bit more comforting. It's not going to lessen the grief and the pain, but it can feel just a little bit more comforting.
Yeah.
And of course, structured grief therapy.
Right. And there are some incredible grief groups out there.
Yeah.
And, if you are so inclined. Again, grief.com has some. There's some in person, a lot of them in person now, to do.
Yeah,
And
which are great.
which really can be helpful, spiritual practices to do. So you can create like a small remembrance ritual. You can write letters to the person. Again, they read it. You can light a candle with intention here. And I love to do that. Another thing that has always helped me is to go for a walk in nature to help you process it. You'd be surprised how, like the wind on your face or the smell of the leaves or something, it kind of just, it helps. It helps. It's like it's healing. And allow oscillation. So, just allow it that it'll web and flow here, because there's no correct pace, period. There's no correct pace.
Yeah. The nature walks, I wanted to add, I had no idea, but a good friend of mine told me, and she got certified in, it's a very kind of old practice from Japan called forest bathing.
Ooh, what is forest bathing?
That everything has energy, and everything talks to itself, to each other. So the trees in the forest talk with the moss, and they talk with the earth, and they talk. And if you go in there and you kind of sit still, you can almost feel the energy from all the, when you talked about nature walking.
Well, we have a forest here. It's too cold to go into it right now, but if you come out in the spring or in the fall or summer or fall, Cheryl, I'll take you there. It's unbelievable. I don't think I've ever taken you there because it's always been too cold.
Because I've only been for New Year's.
Winter. But it's exactly the way you've just described. You literally almost feel like you're in a bath of this kind of energy. It's extraordinary. Yeah. That's a really good idea to do that.
Yeah.
So just remember, everybody, grief is not a sign of weakness. They say it is love with nowhere to go.
Yeah. The nervous system grieves because attachment mattered. The attachment that you had with that person mattered.
Absolutely. And meaning cannot be forced. It has to unfold.
Yeah. And as we've said before, psychology supports the process.
And spirituality supports the meaning.
Yeah.
And you can check out grief.com, David Kessler and Shirley.
Yeah. We hope that we've helped a little to make sense of what you're going through. If you're grieving, and the truth is, we cannot make sense of it. It will just show up whenever it wants.
There are a lot of great books, too, to look at. Any James Van Prague's books. I've got my book. What is the name of it? Cracked Open. Because I tell a story about going, what happens on the other side. Sometimes that's helpful for people to understand. There are all kinds of spiritual books to read on grief.
I find that really helpful. Just as a reminder, again, not because it takes away the pain of grief, but just as a reminder, it kind of calms me down just a little bit, so I can then continue to. But no, it never ends. And that doesn't mean that it's a life sentence, but it shows up less often, but don't expect that there's something wrong with you because maybe a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, you're still feeling, the grief of a loved one with intensity.
Exactly.
It's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So healing is not forgetting. It's integrating.
Yeah.
And so next week, Shirley, we're going to be talking about emotional regulation in a dysregulated world.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be a good one. And actually, before we go, because this helps with grieving too, but it'll really help with what we're going to talk about, I want to pull out this big. Oh, hi, Barry. Everybody see my Barry?
She loves Barry.
So this book, one of my patients referred me to it. The Rabbit Listened. This is a wonder. I was reading it. It's a kid's book, but God, for adults, it's really helpful. I was reading it and I was actually crying through it. And it can really help with what we were just talking about, grief and how to be with someone when they're grieving. It's a wonderful.
Show the book again. It's called.
It's
the Rabbit Listened by, who does it say?
The Rabbit Listened. It says Corey, Cori, Cori, Dorfeld. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Good.
But it's a beautiful book that helps with the process, certainly what we're going to talk about next week, but with the process of grieving as well.
Right. Okay, good. And if everybody wants to watch my show on Thursday, I am going to be talking a little bit about, I'm going to talk about dreams as my topic, but I am going to be talking about all those meteors that are going around. Do you know, there are so many meteors. There was one just in Michigan. I mean, come on, some meaning. We're going to make meaning of that.
Oh, lovely. Can't wait.
Right. All right, Shirley, thank you for everybody. Thank you, everybody. Great to see everybody.
Listening. Have a wonderful